I can't get away from the egg discussion, so naturally what I'm going to do is join the discussion, and that's what I'm doing with this video. This was sparked after I watched the Daily Show video, because normally the Daily Show doesn't talk about eggs, and they made this whole segment. It was pretty funny. I think you should go check it out.
Might have to turn vegan, man.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Of course you're kidding.
Yes.
Vegans are a joke.
Something that clicked for me when I heard the people that were being interviewed in the Daily Show was how big of a problem people thought this was, which to some extent it is, and I want to talk about that. And the second thing is how unwilling people are to budge on, let's be real here, non-necessity.
$20 eggs, that's your stopping point. Means 19, we're still...
19, we still in the game.
Let's dive into it. I want to start with the problem. So there's two core problems here. One of them impacts people and one impacts animals. I'm going to talk a lot about the animals too in this video because this is a twofold problem. And also when both people are happy, the other tends to be happier as well. So the first one is prices. This is obvious. I don't need to over-explain this part of the video. Prices for eggs have gone up. This is all relative to what people are used to paying for eggs. I just think it's been a wake-up call for people. They're used to paying for something at a certain price and it goes up dramatically, and when that happens, people are pretty commonly outraged. We saw this with inflation. We saw this with all the other rising expenses during the pandemic. And on that note, the second issue, first one is prices. The second issue is there's a pandemic, guys. That's not being labeled as a pandemic, but ultimately the reason why all of this stuff is more expensive is because of a bird flu. And for birds, this is a pandemic. Now, I say for birds, but this isn't just birds. They've now found it in cows, specifically with regards to milk. Now, luckily, people who pasteurize milk and don't listen to nut jobs who think you should drink raw milk online are protected from this, so you're not going to catch it yourself. But the point stands that someone's already died from bird flu, and all it takes is a certain mutation or a certain way that this mixes with a different flu in humans for this to now become a human pandemic. Why is this pandemic happening? I'm going to have a much more critical take on this than most people want to touch, and it's not something that no one's touched before. Here's a clip from a great TEDx talk I like.
The virus came from wild animals spreading to people because of our behaviors that put us at risk.
And if you're a naturalist or someone who chases after what's natural, what we do with chickens is not natural. Thousands of chickens kept in a tight space. They are given miserable lives. When there's a single chicken with bird flu, they actually have to kill all of them, or else it'll just spread and kill them all anyway, and they want to at least prevent the spread and keep it contained. What we do with chickens is not okay or right. And my critical side actually thinks that for some of these birds, getting the flu and dying quickly is probably better than the actual lives they're given. Which is a sad concept, but nowhere do I hear people talking about the birds in this. If this was a dog pandemic, people would be thinking about dogs. People, for some reason, have made an exception for dogs where they'll pay anything, price doesn't matter, and the animal's what's more important. But for anything that we eat, which in some cultures are dogs, and they see dogs the same way, we just don't extend that to other animals depending on the foods that we eat. So I want to stay on topic here. I don't have a script. I have these notes. Why it's happening is because of a pandemic. If we're not able to see this as a pandemic, this is going to keep happening, and it also doesn't allow us to actually deal with the problem. I want to use an analogy here that might make more sense to people. It's another area where people care about prices, gas prices. Let's say that you're driving your car and there's something very clearly wrong with it. Let's say it's blowing out smog out the back, and you also realize that you are having to put in twice as much gas as you normally do per month. You might think, oh crap, I gotta fix the root problem here because it's causing my gas to be twice as much. Seems obvious, but people don't apply this to other things in their lives, in this case, eggs. And I think the reason for that is part of my frustrations. I understand the frustrations about prices. No one likes to spend more. I don't want to spend more. If the food that I ate went up 5x in price, I wouldn't be happy about it. The problem is this is not a necessity. It's not that hard to just eat oatmeal. There's plenty of cereal, though I wouldn't really recommend cereal as like a healthy breakfast replacement in most situations, but oatmeal's perfectly healthy. A tofu scramble's perfectly healthy. There are probably like 10 other foods that you can buy at a grocery store. But my frustrations with this actually seem to be a common pattern that I see during difficult times. People are stubborn with their lifestyle. And when you go back to the pandemic, the main thing was toilet paper. People didn't buy toilet paper because it was a necessity or something you needed to survive. People bought toilet paper because I think it was a reflection of something needing to change in their life. People hopped on toilet paper because the fear of not having toilet paper just was too much for most people. It would reflect a change in life that was out of their control. This was a representation of losing control. And I think in situations where there's anxiety, where there are issues in the world, people want to feel control. And what do when they want control? They cling to things that sometimes don't really matter. There are ways to still want control and do it in a rational way, but that would mean going to Costco and buying a bidet instead of just stocking up on a ton of toilet paper that you're going to now have for the next 5 years. Likewise with eggs, people are stocking up on eggs, and who knows if they'll even last that long in the fridge. I actually learned from a prepping book I was reading that you can freeze eggs. And the only reason I'll suggest this is if you are somebody who mass bought eggs, you already bought them, you already have them, so I guess freeze them and try to make them last as long as possible. A second frustration of mine is that with all the hype that people give capitalism, people don't actually engage with it in the way they're supposed to. Our job as consumers in a capitalist society is to vote with our wallet. We're not supposed to buy the worst product that is more expensive, harder to get, harder to acquire, and doesn't really offer any clear benefit to something else. So when we continue to buy eggs at these ridiculous prices, I hate to say this to you, but it's just telling the entire industry that people will happily pay that much for eggs. I keep seeing people online with a take, which is once the bird flu's dealt with, prices will drop again. I'm doubtful. What people have demonstrated is that rather than make a single lifestyle change, which is move a single meal into other alternatives that have always been cheaper, have always been, in some ways, just as healthy, they don't want to make the lifestyle change. And that signals to everybody else that, well, we can charge whatever the hell we want for these things. So regardless of a bird flu, I think that people refusing to just stop buying eggs is actually going to shoot them in the foot in the long run. Just to sum up my frustrations before I head into the solutions that I want to share with you, I'm just frustrated at people's behavior, their insensitivity to an entire species that's fighting for its survival, while humans sit back and go, well, you were supposed to die for another reason, which is to be on my plate. But now you're dying because of a flu, and it's making the egg prices more expensive to me, and that's inconvenient. And I think that's a very short-sighted and really basic view of things that I just think is really sad. I just wish people were able to approach this with a bit more kindness. Now, solutions. I always like to have solutions for things. I do a lot of complaining, and if I don't complain with solutions, then it's worthless. So, short-term solutions. You don't want to hear it? I'm going to say it. Don't buy eggs. What? But I need eggs. Eggs are not a necessity. You can be perfectly healthy at any stage in life without any animal foods. Now, you don't need to go vegan, right? I'm not saying you need to go vegan. All I'm saying is you can safely, very safely move a single meal over to plant-based. If plant-based sounds scary, we'll just call it oatmeal. It's a little trick, right? If you don't call something plant-based, it doesn't sound weird. So eat oatmeal in the morning. Have cereal. Try something new. I promise you, there are so many good foods out there that are not eggs that are still delicious and can give you that feeling of just a beautiful morning with a beautiful breakfast. Stretch out of your comfort zone a little bit. It'll save you money. It'll probably increase your fiber content. There are too many studies now showing that switching over even some animal proteins to plant proteins, you don't have to go full vegan, are very beneficial to your long-term health. So look at this as an improvement for the birds, for you, and for your wallet. It's kind of a win all around. The other tangent short-term solution, it's kind of in the same vein here, but don't buy overpriced non-necessities. This is just a general rule of thumb. When you, and this kind of starts tying to the long-term part of this, when we buy way overpriced non-necessities in life, all it does is signal either directly to a company that we're okay paying that price, or to a competitor of the company, and they go, oh, holy crap, they kept 90% of their customers and they charged twice as much. So let's just boost up the price and just take the profits home. Wealth inequality in the US right now is out of control. And I'm not only blaming consumers. I know that a lot of this is systemic. I know that a lot of this is exploitative. I'm not saying it's just the consumer, but consumers definitely aren't helping or really expressing any issue with the situation when they still go there and pay twice as much. Now, long-term solution, there's good, better, best. Good long-term solution, better animal treatment. Sounds obnoxious, I know, maybe things will be a little bit more expensive, but it builds a more resilient food system. When chickens are packed unnaturally by the thousands in packed little areas, this is not good for them, and in the long run, it's not good for you. It sets up a food system that can easily fall apart, literally because of a flu. The problem here is that better is probably going to be local, and I don't even mean your local farm, I mean just local people you know. The reason I say this is people feel really good buying free-range chicken eggs. I don't want to burst your bubble, I just want to be real, it doesn't really help that much. While buying free range might feel better, and I know that we all want to try to do better, it's not really doing better. So this is something that needs to be spoken about publicly. If you just buy free range and keep going along with your day, you're kind of falling for the whole trick, which is they don't want people to be outraged about how they're treating animals. So good is being educated about how chickens are treated. Please just watch some videos on this. I'm not gonna go deep dive into it in this video, but there are so many great people, and I'll leave one down below that covers the treatment of chickens, and so you get a better idea and why free range doesn't really solve very many of those. But I think good is getting chickens locally from someone you know, just has their backyard chickens and treats them well. Or even your own. Now, I think better and best. People don't want to hear this, but as I already alluded to early on in the video, moving away from animals is going to build a more resilient and better long-term sustainable option for most people. Sun's coming in, so this is getting really harsh on my eyes and probably for you, the camera, so I apologize, but animal foods, animal foods aren't entirely bad, and I don't think, again, people need to go fully vegan, but when you're going to a grocery store, you need to understand that when you're buying animal products, it is coming from a very screwed up industry. It's an industry that looks at lives as money, that looks at animals as nothing less than something that's designed to be dominated by a human. And I think that if we applied these kind of requirements and these animal welfare standards to animals that we have made exceptions for, like dogs, it just wouldn't fly in our society. But besides the ethics, you know, staying on topic with the video, what's more important is building a food system that works for everybody in the long run, where people aren't as impacted by pandemics. Ideally, we don't have to worry about the pandemics affecting humans in the long run. People get to spend less money on their groceries. People get more diversity and better health from the food that they're eating. I think eggs are a perfectly healthy food. Just for the record, I'm not saying eggs aren't healthy. I just think in the context of the average American diet, eating more plant-based foods will not hurt people, and it will probably significantly help a lot of people. Unfortunately, eggs are not the place I'd start with a swap, but we're given an opportunity to still make a difference and make a change that could be beneficial, and I feel like people should take advantage of it. So solutions. I think people really need to try to zoom out a little bit and remember that this is a pandemic. That's the reality. It's a pandemic, and it's going to have impacts on everybody. Let's just be thankful that the impact that we have to deal with as of right now is higher food costs for a single item that's a non-necessity, whereas for somebody else, they're suffering with their lives. And that could eventually switch. We are not that far away from the reality of humans catching this because of the way that we're engaging with animals. So keep the context in mind. This could be so much worse than it is. and the only switch you need to make is a pretty easy switch when it comes to it. Ultimately, would you rather sacrifice eggs, or would you have to go through another COVID-19? So I'll leave this video. Thanks for watching.